Hi guys, we're going to talk a little bit about gender, and this is from your super awesome Crotwell gender packet that so if you go about 2/3 of the way through, we are going to look at From He to She in First Grade by Lori Frankel. And this is an excellent article. I wanted to show you, since we're talking about gender, what happens when someone wants to change their gender. Sometimes they know at an early age, sometimes perhaps later. When their son turned 6, he realized that he didn't just like to put on plays and dress, wear a sparkly green dress. That's from page 584. He decided he wanted to be a girl, and part of it was dress up. And so Lori and her husband are like, okay, what do we do? How do we be good parents? And the third paragraph on 584 says, my husband and I were never of an opinion that girls should not wear pants or climb trees or get dirty, or that boys should not have long hair or play with dolls or like pink. So the dress did not cause us undue harm or worry. So even though she's making an argument, she's still using compare and contrast with a gender component to kind of how people see that, oh, girls wear dresses and boys climb trees, but she's like, we didn't see it that way, that it was just part of both. So they weren't worried about it until he was ready to go to school, and they wanted to make it his choice for sure, and they're using the he pronoun, and the mom says, they'll say, are you a boy or a girl? They'll say, you can't wear that. Boys don't wear dresses. Haha, you're stupid. So they kind of role played, and the son was like, I know what they're going to say. I know how they're going to treat me. And the mom kind of says, well, how do you feel about it? And he says, I'm not worried about it. I want to wear skirts and dresses to school. So they go school shopping, and they bought 3 school skirts. This is on page 586. 3 school skirts, 3 school tops, a pair of white sandals. They are brainstorming, they role played. We practice saying, if girls can wear pants and skirts, so can boys. We practice saying, you wear what you're comfortable wearing. This is what I'm comfortable wearing. We practice polite ways of suggesting they mind their own business. If you have kids or nieces or nephews, you will know this is you're preparing for bullies, you're trying to get them ready to do what they need to do best. And she says on 586, about halfway down the page, do we love our children best by protecting them at all costs or by supporting them unconditionally? Does love mean saying nothing, not even your happiness, is as important as your safety? Or does love meaning be who you are and I will love that person no matter what? And he decided he wanted to be seen as a girl, so they put barrettes in his short hair. He was really happy. They're walking to school, and they said some children noticed and some didn't. Some laughed and some didn't care. And he said it was mostly over within a month, that people were used to how he was. At the end of the first week, middle of page 587, when he was going to bed on Friday night, he was upset about something, weepy, cranky, and irritable. He couldn't or wouldn't tell me what the problem was. His eyes were wet, his fist balls, his face stormy. I tucked him in and kissed him goodnight and asked him, like, what's the matter? Like, talk to me. And I said, you don't have to keep wearing skirts and dresses to school, If kids are being mean, if it feels weird, you can absolutely go back to shorts and t-shirts. He snapped out of him immediately, sitting up. No, Mama. I wish I could say that he did so sweetly, but his tone was more like, don't be an idiot. I already decided about that. He said, I never think about that anymore. It had been 3 days. It was also true. He had already decided. He didn't think about that anymore, and she never looked back. She grew out her hair. She stopped telling people she was a boy in a skirt and started being a girl in a skirt instead. So interesting. And then they give us a takeaway in our conclusion about celebrating the story instead of hiding it. She's like, I want to tell people how my daughter kind of claimed her feeling. And she brings back the symbol of the green sparkly dress, and it says, now that she can be who she is on the inside and on the outside, on weekdays as well as on weekends, at home and everywhere else, the sparkly green dress has once again become just a costume. So, kind of lovely, using the dress as the dress up throughout and then bringing it back. Nice closure. Next article is Teaching Men to Be Emotionally Honest by Andrew Reiner. And if you notice down here the little author notes, it says A Chronicle of Higher Education, Chicago Tribune, NPR, New York Times. So he teaches at Townsend University. So he's looking at gender and masculinity, what we're studying in our unit. And he basically does a lot of the same things from our TED Talk. Be a big boy, don't cry, be tough, be a man. And he feels that in his courses that sometimes men are, and boys, mutate their emotional suffering into anger. And he feels that men are kind of at war with themselves. He makes his argument, notice the word choice on 590. He says, what boys seem to need is the very thing they fear. Yet when they are immunized against this deeper emotional honesty, the results have far-reaching, often devastating consequences. The emergence of the metrosexual and an increase in stay-at-home dads, tough guy stereotypes die hard. As men continue to fall behind women in college while outpacing them 4-to-1 in the suicide rate, one may need to be taught to think beyond their own stereotypes. We said in our gender notes that suicides were going up for men, unfortunately, in our society, partly because of the masculinity, the economy, fewer men in education, all those items we talked about. Then he kind of says, he asks the boys why don't they try hard in school, and he says nothing's worse for a guy than looking like a try-hard. That you don't want to be the guy that tries so hard and doesn't get the results, so it's easier just not to try. And he has a lovely transition and topic sentence when he's introducing his sources here on the bottom of 590. He says, in a report based on the 2013 book, The Rise of Women, The Growing Gender Gap in Education and What It Means for American Schools, the sociologists Thomas A. Dupreet and Claudia Buchman observe, boys' underperformance in school has more to do with society's norms about masculinity than with anatomy, hormones, or brain structure. So a nice job here. When you're citing sources, give a shout out to the people. If they have credentials, let us know. If they have a research study or an article that they've published that's really helpful information for your reader. He also gives the bro code. He talks about the collegiate male etiquette. We're going to look at fraternities, sororities on campus, what that looks like for when you guys transfer. And he kind of says that men and women are both into hooking up, which we've seen from our Cosmo article as well, that is not a problem for people. He says what we do though as a society is socialize the vulnerability out of men. At about 15 or 16, they begin to sound like gender stereotypes. They tell us they don't have time for their male friends, even though they still want those close friendships, but they're not sure how to keep them. And basically, he says romantic partners are the main source of intimacy for men. Also, it becomes a power signal. Says the perceived threat of diminishing power is exposing ugly, at times menacing fault lines in the male psyche. Experts point to sexual assaults on campus and even mass murders like those at a community college in Oregon and a movie theater in Colorado. These gunmen were believed to share two hyper-masculine traits, feelings of profound isolation and a compulsion for viral notoriety. So they're saying, look, we have to study men, we have to study women, we have to study fatherhood, motherhood, gender studies, how people balance work and family life. Why don't we have more resources for men if things are kind of going wrong on college campuses. They talk about empowering men to be more emotional and to embrace all of their humanity. And then they talk about a real man experiment. So when you get here, it was very telling and kind of horrible that his experiment, his research is he had a girl cry in the library and saw and kind of filmed and watched how many people went to try to comfort her and check if something was wrong. And then he had a guy cry in the library, and he found he had videotaped himself, and it said no one did the same thing and came to ask if he was okay. And he crossed his arms, his laser pointer pushing against his bicep like a syringe, and paused. He said, it's like we're scared that the natural order of things will completely collapse. That here's a guy saying, look, I'm trying to be emotional, I'm putting it out there, I'm sitting in the library, and no one even stops to ask if I'm okay. Like, you know, that's gotta be inherent in a broken system. Next article by Stephen Mays. What about gender roles in same-sex relationships? So we're saying that 1950s, 60s, 70s, homosexuality and lesbian relationships moved up. People were more forthcoming in how they identified. And this is it's from US News and World Report, very particular article about how women or men see their relationships as male or female, or the woman of the relationship or the man of the relationship, how people kind of define them. And again, that's about us associating certain character traits with masculinity or femininity that we said we didn't want to do, but that people do anyway. But that we need to understand that some actions are what they call gender neutral. And this is important. It boils down to all of us that we just want qualities that are going to be lovely in our relationship, and we're going to build what that is. That maybe someone's the provider sometimes, maybe you're both the provider, maybe somebody's the cook sometimes, and it switches off and on. That it's not a thing about biology or gender per se, it's about how you divide the work in the house and how you guys decide to see each other. So gender packet, pretty important. We're going beyond just heteronormative ideas and looking at different ways to see things, and it's important to kind of open our mind if we're going to be working on argument and compare and contrast next. Okay, thanks.